What is going on, guys? We are back here with another discussion video, and to be honest with you, was really hoping this was a video that I was not going to have to make, but here we are. And we are maybe a couple of months removed from the Corey Steel Cutter Nightmare that was the most recent Pro Tour Final Fantasy, and the regional championships that took place prior to then. And we thought, at least with the banning of 7 different cards from the format, including the menace that was Corey Steel Cutter, we thought everything was going to be okay. But it turns out that Paulo Vitor Domodorosa and a couple of other people decided that they were going to break the format before the bans even happened. And here we are making another video talking about bans. I don't like using that word. I hate having to use that word. But this is the state of the standard format, and this is kind of where we are right now. Now, let's talk about kind of how we got here. So, as I mentioned, the Pro Tour happened. Is it Corey Steel Cutter? Is it Prowess? Was basically everywhere. The top 8 was 4 Is it Prowess decks and 4 Mono Red decks. Eventually, the tournament was taken down by Mono Red, and there was a ban announcement where 7 cards got banned. Both Mono Red and Is It got addressed, and on top of that, there was a brand new set coming out with Edge of Eternities, and we thought everything was going to be okay. The format got sort of a double reset with rotation happening and bans and new set, everything all at once. We thought everything was going to be okay. And then they decided to, well, I guess Vivi has already been in attendance at the Pro Tour, but they decided to give us this little card that you see on your screen called Vivi or Nitie. And as it turns out, when you have an ability on a creature that allows you to add mana to your mana pool, and you don't put an activation cost or a tap cost on that, it seems like there's ways to take advantage of that. And the most egregious example of that is if you are pairing Vivi with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So this is kind of the 2-card combo that's been absolutely destroying Standard for the past month or so, ever since the release of EOE, and it took a couple of weeks for people to catch on to this deck, but now it's everywhere. And the whole point is that the Cauldron sort of sidesteps the downsides that Vivi has. Vivi, in and of itself, is a 3-mana creature. You have to spend some amount of mana to be able to cast it. You need to be able to play spells after that. Ideally, you want to be able to untap with it. But the Cauldron not only removes the downside of having to spend the initial mana up front on Vivi, you also get to sort of cheat the system a little bit, where Vivi normally starts with 0 power. That's how it's balanced, right? Or I should use the, in quotation marks, balanced. And the fact that Cauldron just lets you put this ability onto any creature with any amount of power, especially something like Marauding Mako that can continue to grow over and over again, it just gets to a, pun intended, boiling over point where things just get out of control. And now we are sort of in a position where, guess what? We have another broken Izzet deck, and it seems like the only deck that can keep Izzet in check is, checks notes, Mono Red. I feel like we've seen that before. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys the metagame on day 1 for the Spotlight series that took place in Orlando. So this was the metagame table here for the Spotlight series. As you can see, day 1 of the tournament, Is It Cauldron was, I say, only 30% of the metagame, Mono Red at 5.3. So almost a third of the field decided to bring Is It Cauldron. Now, this is in a time where everybody knew that Is It Cauldron was the best deck going in, so you would imagine that on day 2, the deck would probably do a little bit. Whoa, my God, it's 54%. So even though every single person in that event knew that Cauldron was the best deck going in, it still almost doubled its metagame share from day 1 to day 2. Well, I mean, 30% of the room, it's going to have a good conversion rate, but let's take a look and see. Well, you might imagine if people were prepared for it, maybe it had a bad win rate. Well, you would also be incorrect, because guess what? It had the best win rate of the entire weekend. This data is coming to you from mtgdex.net. They compiled a data set of every single match from the Spotlight series in Orlando, and lo and behold, The deck that had the highest win percentage was also the deck that everybody knew going in and the deck that everybody was prepared for. Realistically, the only deck that even stood a chance against Is It Cauldron was, you guessed it, Mono Red, which, to be fair, did eventually win the tournament. But how many times are we gonna have to go through this cycle of Is It becomes the most broken deck in Standard, the only thing that can even come close to fighting against it is Mono Red, and then a ban happens. So what's the next Is It deck? Who knows? So now we get to kind of the reasons why something needs to change. If it wasn't already evident based on the evidence that I've already provided to you, the metagame share, conversion rate from day 1 to day 2, the win percentages, even though everybody knew it was the best deck, there's also another statistic that WotC and Wizards looks into when they are determining whether or not they want to take action, and that is player attendance. Historically, in the past, if you look at formats like Affinity and Cobblades, some of the more obvious tier 0 standard formats of all time, if you go back and look at the history of that and you can dig a little bit deeper, you can find that a lot of people were stopped going to tournaments. People just didn't want to play Magic during that time. And a huge indicator of something needing to change is this that you see on your screen here, this tweet from Sol Malka at Target Player. Spotlight Series, which was in Atlanta in January of this year, held 1,453 players. Standard. Spotlight Series in Orlando, which was also standard, that took place just a couple of weeks ago, 671 players. The tournament, by the way, caps at 2,000, so they didn't even make half of the cap, which is completely ridiculous. Now, I understand there are other external factors, Labor Day weekend, people going back to school. Orlando is maybe not the best location because it was brutally hot throughout the entire weekend. So certainly there is some of that to make sure that you factor that in, some of that at play here. But I mean, even if you take all three of those factors and you incorporate them into your decision or your sort of rationalization of why the tournament was such a low turnout, almost a 800 player difference probably doesn't account for just those factors alone. There's certainly some of it is people just do not want to play the format. So now that we're here, what exactly should happen? We've basically come to the conclusion based on metagame share and win percentages and tournament attendance that very clearly something needs to happen. Now, I want to preface this by saying I don't necessarily expect Wizards to do anything prior to their already scheduled ban announcement, which is going to be coming, I believe, on November 24th. Please, somebody, if you're watching this, fact check me in the comment section down below. But something needs to happen. I think we can all agree with that. Now, the big question is what? The problem is Vivi and Cauldron, right? Now, there's basically three outcomes here. Either Vivi gets banned, that's option number 1. Cauldron gets banned, that's option number 2. Or both of them get banned, option number 3. There is an option number 4 where nothing gets banned, but I can't realistically imagine that could ever happen. And I think that a lot of people would just sell their entire standard collection if that did happen. So we're just going to leave that one out for now. So let's talk about option number 1, Vivi getting banned. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you because I've seen a lot of other people have this discussion in terms of the contract with Square Enix and all of this stuff where maybe Square Enix is pressuring them into not banning Vivi. We don't know the contract details, so I can't really speak on behalf of whether any of that is even remotely true. So we're just not even going to bother having that discussion. In terms of power level, the text box on the card and the impact on the format, yes, Vivi is an extremely pushed card, right? It is a 0 mana activation cost that adds mana to your mana pool. That's always going to be super powerful. But I do actually firmly believe, and again, let me know in the comment section if you, I know I'm going to get some hate in the comments for this. Personally, without the Cauldron, I think Vivi might be okay. I really, really appreciate Vivi in some of the more prowess-focused decks where they're playing Stormchaser's Talon and Astrologian's Planisphere. They're planning, like, they only play one Cauldron anyways, as just sort of this miser, like, if it happens, it happens. But they're trying to hardcast Vivi, actually play a couple of spells. And the thing about Vivi is that while an extremely push design, it still has some backstops, right? You have to spend 3 mana on this creature. It has 0 power, so presumably if you're tapping out on turn 3, you can't really do anything with it the turn that you play it. And you have to untap with it. You then have to play more spells to be able to keep triggering it. And it is entirely possible that down the road, maybe it proves that Vivi is way too much in these prowess decks, and maybe we have to have this conversation again. So in that regard, it is certainly safer to just ban Vivi or both of them. But to be honest with you, maybe less so about the pressure from Square Enix, because I don't want to discuss on that. But Vivi is a beloved character from a lot of people who play Final Fantasy and people who purchase this product, and it's possible that they don't want to ban their flagship Mythic Rare from their best-selling set of all time. Maybe there's a little bit of that as well. They want to try to avoid banning such a new card. And going back to Cauldron, let's sort of take a look at Cauldron here real quick. If you want to have a discussion on Agatha Soul Cauldron, well, to be honest with you, this card theoretically should have already rotated, right? When they made the decision to switch from 2-year standard to 3-year standard, not sure exactly how the design timelines sort of factor into all of this, but let's imagine that Final Fantasy was designed with the intention of there being 2-year standard. So when they were designing Final Fantasy, in their mind, Cauldron would have already rotated, right? I guess that's not necessarily true, because there's that small window where Final Fantasy comes out before rotation and then rotation happens, but that's what, a couple of weeks, maybe a month tops. So I don't think they would have factored that in when they were designing Vivi. So if they had not even, it's certainly possible, and I would say at this point almost 100% likely, that they just didn't even think about Soul Cauldron, because in their timeline, Cauldron was already going to have been rotated out of standard. Now, it's unfortunate because outside of Vivi, Cauldron really has never done anything in terms of, I mean, it's seen some play here or there in various Insidious Roots decks. There's these weird artifact style things you can do with Rust Harvester, and there's some cool stuff you can do with it. Like, I remember the red-green artifact deck that had Voldarin Thrillseeker. I played Cauldron in that deck because it was like a counters-based deck. There's some cool stuff you can do with it. But again, the combination of Soul Cauldron being the older card should have rotated already anyways, assuming that they were sticking to their old release schedule. Personally, I would rather see Soul Cauldron go. Now, again, I know there's some risk in this, and I'm willing to understand and accept that risk. But hear me out, okay? So I want to end with the only way that I think this can happen is if they're banning Soul Cauldron and not Vivi. They need to change their cadence. They need to be able to just come out and say, once a month, first week of the month, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to take a look at win rates, take a look at play rates, take a look at metagame share, whatever they need to do. Once a month, first Monday of the month or whatever it falls on. And they just need to be able to come out and do once a month ban announcements. They don't even necessarily have to ban something every single month. Just be able to have the conversation and come out and say, okay, if something needs to go, we're going to act on it, which means that we get into these situations where with Cauldron and Vivi, there's another spotlight coming up in about a month and a half in Baltimore. And to be quite honest with you, because I assume they're not going to do anything before November, I don't even really want to go to the event. It's just going to be the same standard format that was Vivi Cauldron. And you just get these weird periods, and you're giving reasons for people to not play the game that you work on, even though they're making this huge push towards standard. And I think it's a combination of more sets per year, right? They're adding more sets into the release schedule, combined with extended rotation. So more sets per year and extended rotation, this is the biggest standard we've ever seen. And in order to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, you need to be able to admit when you're wrong. And they're willing to do that on a maybe 3-4 month basis, but with how much product is being released, I think they have to do it every single month. So, in conclusion, here is what I would like to see, and this is how I think I'm not going to say fix everything, because again, there's a little bit of risk involved, but here is what I would do if I were in WotC's position. I would ban Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and on top of that, I would make it so that every single month there's a new ban announcement. Again, you don't have to ban something every single time you make that announcement. Just come out and say, hey, we've taken a look at the metagame, everything looks fine. And then if something comes up 2 weeks later, then you ban it the next month, so on and so forth. So ban Agatha's Soul Cauldron, change the cadence to, every single month, beginning of the month, just come out and say, if something needs to happen, we're going to do it. I understand there's a little bit of consumer confidence, and especially during RCQ times, we're like sort of right in the thick of standard season, and there's going to be another standard season after this. I understand it. But if you give the people who buy a deck at the minimum a month to be able to play their deck before it inevitably gets banned, well, they still have a month to be able to try and win an RCQ with the broken deck, and then deck gets banned, move on, so on and so forth. So that is what I would like to see happen, and this is a very, very controversial subject. So what I really want to hear from is you guys. What do you think should happen with the upcoming standard ban announcement? Do they need to do an emergency ban prior to November? Do you think they should also change their ban cadence and do once a month or once every other month or something like that? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below, and together we can fix standard. I'll see you in the next one.